Welcome to Screenfish Radio. Welcome to the conversation. We're so glad that you could join us today as we are talking about the Iron Claw. And this week, I have a couple of real heavyweight guests for us today. Coming to the ring first, you might not be able to see him, but you can smell what he's cooking. Dave Voigt from In the Seats. Welcome, Dave.
That was the worst intro ever, but thank you for having me, man.
Oh, it's going to get worse. And in this corner, he has a cult of personality, but he is everyone's American nightmare. Prabhjot Bains. Welcome, Prab.
Yes, let's go. Yeah, I love that intro, by the way. I'm not that cynical. I love it.
You see, there you go. I'm really excited to talk about The Iron Claw by Sean Durkin this week. But before we do that, I feel that we should tap into a little bit of this week's Oscar noms. And I would love to hear from you both how you felt about this year's crop. Were there any films that you felt got ripped off, duly feted, if you will? Nice surprises. What caught your attention?
The big discourse coming out of the Oscars is the lack of nominations for Greta Gerwig, Margot Robbie, all of that. I myself am not big on the film, but I mean, besides looking at that part, I'm pretty satisfied with the nominees. I'm pretty shocked, like cases like Charles Melton was totally ignored from the Academy, and a big surprise for me actually was I was surprised Willem Dafoe didn't get in for Poor Things. I thought because throughout the whole award season, it was him and Ruffalo were both getting recognized, and now when it came down to the Oscars, you had Willem Dafoe kind of go by the wayside. So that was one of the big surprises. But I guess the acting nominations, that was the big thing. You had one Greta Gerwig not getting nominated, and the other Greta Lee for Past Lives. That was one thing I was kind of disappointed by, that she wasn't nominated. So I'm generally satisfied, but yeah, of course, like every year, there's some glaring omissions, right?
Every year it is somewhat of a bloodbath. Oscar nomination day exists so that we can complain. Really.
Exactly.
That's what it is.
And a lot of it doesn't really make sense to me, because I was looking at a lot of tweets, a lot of discourse, and talking about how it's so shocking that Barbie is a movie that only, Ryan Gosling got nominated for. But I mean, are they forgetting that America Ferrera was nominated? Like, I guess only if the white woman doesn't get nominated, then they're kind of disappointed. But like, I just don't understand. It's confusing that, like, well, a woman did get nominated, right? So and no one's really bringing that up at all. And it's just all the conversations around Gerwig and Robbie. And I think, well, I mean, let's not forget. I mean, they deserve to be recognized, but I mean, a woman did get in, right? And that's a big, nice surprise at that with Ferreira. So I thought that was really interesting.
I was struck by a line today from the fantastic Whoopi Goldberg, which puts it all in perspective. We have to stop thinking about the quote unquote snubs. Mm-hmm. Not everybody gets to win, boys and girls. Period. It doesn't make the work any less good, mm-hmm. But not everybody gets to win. And the discourse around the snubs and deserve and all that is really kind of ridiculous.
It is funny how overblown it can get. And I think that the Barbie discourse, I mean, the funny thing is I actually understand more for Gerwig than I do for Robbie. And I think Robbie was wonderful in the film. But I'm looking at that category, and it's like they're all incredible. They're all incredible in their films. Carey Mulligan, Sandra Hüller,
yeah,
Emma Stone, Lily Gladstone, and Annette Bening are all incredible selections.
I was kind of surprised by the Naiad. Both the performances from Naiad were nominated. I didn't really see a lot of steam going in, and I think that's where a lot of the flack I feel is coming from. Like when Naiad came in and took a spot from someone people thought was more deserving. And you're right, David. I mean, the Oscars really it's never been really a meritocracy. It's about who can campaigned the best, and I think that's one of the big reasons why the movie we're going to talk about today, Iron Claw, didn't really get into the purview of Academy voters for sure.
And even just to reference back to what you said about Naiad, I mean, I remember watching that during the festival and going, "Yeah, this is an Oscar movie. This is designed as an
Yeah.
Oscar movie," and it was wild. I mean, it's a good movie. Is it a great movie? No, but it's a very good movie. And it's just one of those things where it's like, why are people surprised that this got nominated? I mean, this was designed to do that. And I mean, in all the hubbub and all the talk of the snubs and this, that, or the other, I mean, it does get a little glossed over as well that, Jodie Foster, who is openly LGBTQ, is playing an LGBTQ character. And I mean, that's probably one of the first times somebody has been nominated for actually doing that. And I think that's a good thing too.
Is it the first time that's happened?
I think it's got to be one of the first. I mean, I'd have to look it up, but it's got to be up there. I remember seeing something the other day. It was like Jodie and somebody else. Oh, Coleman Domingo. Yeah, Jodie and Coleman Domingo. I think this is the first time that actors who are openly LGBTQ playing LGBTQ characters have been nominated for their performances.
Wow. See, that's incredible. Like there are good things to be discussing about the Oscar noms. Like, do I wish Gerwig had gotten nominated? Yes, absolutely. Were there some that surprised me? Sure, but there's lots of things to be excited about.
Yeah.
Think,
Yeah, and like you're saying, like it's not like one person gets left by the wayside, another person gets in, right? And that's not to say a woman did get in for director. I mean, Justine Triet, she got in, right? That's a big. I'm pretty sure she got nominated for director, right?
yeah, she did.
Right?
Yeah, she did.
Yeah. So, so she got in. Like that's a big one there. I just think people are really upset that kind of the phenomenon that was Barbenheimer. They wanted, they wanted to, eat their cake, right? And it didn't come to fruition, but there's a lot to like here, and I think I'm really spoiled because rarely when I see the Oscars coming out, rarely some of my favorite films are recognized, and I've just come to the fact that like I don't really, my favorite movies are never really gonna do well at the Oscar, but this year all my top five movies that I love the most were nominated, and my favorite movie of the year, Poor Things, was recognized heavily, which I really enjoyed. Yeah.
And the Academy is embracing the weird.
Yeah.
Like Poor Things would have 3-4 nominations. It's got way more than that. It did exceptionally well. I mean, even a category like animated feature film. I love the fact that the room basically groaned when they said Elemental alongside the other 4 nominees because it made me laugh to just sort of enjoy the reality that, especially when it comes to animated feature films, sort of the reign of Disney is likely going to be over this year.
I defend Elemental. I actually really enjoy Elemental, but I know it was not as well received, certainly. But I I think you're absolutely right. Like you're absolutely right. I mean, there's some picks this year that would not have been picks in years past, and I think it's funny. Like I think the outcry over someone like Gerwig, and you mentioned Rob about Justine Triet. Most people just haven't seen that. See, Barbie was a phenomenon. It wasn't just about the Barbenheimer thing. I mean, it is, but she really did do the impossible. Like she took a property that shouldn't have been able to do what they did and made it into something truly special. So in that sense, I think she deserved to be on there. But and most people just haven't seen Anatomy of a Fall. Probably when I was listening to the radio afterwards, and they said, one of the people I heard said, I've seen 2 of those movies. And when they listed the best pictures, and it's so I think it's what people connect to that makes them upset. Like, why didn't the thing I like get
Right, and I'm guilty of that too. I just said that right now that I'm happy. Poor Things, my favorite movie, got nominated. Right, like I'm a victim of that as well. But yeah, I think yeah, and everything when it comes down to Oscars, we always, like David was saying, we focus on what missed out rather than what's actually getting recognized, and I'm guilty of that every year. I think going back a few years, I think the biggest one for me was Adam Sandler for Uncut Gems. I was livid when that didn't happen, but and it kind of it affects how you view the Academy. But I mean, I think this year is really diverse in terms of the genre and the type of film. You do have some of those like classic Oscar type movies in there. Like Dave said, made for the Oscars, but I think there's a lot of weirdness, oddity that's there that's people don't really expect from the Oscar that's there. So it's a good mix this year. I overall I'm pretty happy the direction Academy's taking.
And can we please shine a light on the reality that a Canadian produced documentary film from the NFB made the top 5 and is nominated for an Oscar for Best Documentary Feature Film in To Kill a Tiger? Like, honestly, of all these announcements, that's the one that made me the happiest.
Yep. I absolutely. That's exciting. Godzilla -1. Come on, Godzilla -1.
Did you see the video of the VFX team when they found out that they got nominated? They're like shooting confetti all over the place and everything. Like it was awesome. They were watching it live in Japan. It was really awesome to see.
What that film did with $13 million is truly unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
and talking about something that made me laugh a lot about the Academy. I remember earlier this year there's that big kerfuffle over France choosing Taste of Things over Anatomy of a Fall, and the reasons are up in the air. Obviously, Triet, the movie's obviously Anatomy of a Fall wasn't chosen for France's pick. Half the movie's in English. Triet's also vocal about her opposition to Macron, all of that. We can argue why it wasn't chosen. But they gambled on Taste of Things. Nothing. It didn't pan out for them at all. Taste of Things was not selected as one of the international features. And so I think France is really regretting that decision now. But what it also just sheds a light on is why does the Academy still fixate on one submission per country, right? Like in this case, France had some really good movies come out of it, and no one gets to play. And even Japan this year, you had Boy and the Heron, Godzilla -1, Perfect Days, right? But only one of them gets to shine in that category, right? So I think it's time to review that as well, right? Because countries aren't a monolith, right? They have a lot of different stories to tell, and I feel like we should open it up instead of just having one submission. And again, I guess that kind of plays into the whole politics that the Academy is, right? Whoever campaigns the hardest, governing bodies choose to be the film. That kind of plays into it. So I think that's what kind of sours people against the Academy. But yeah, I think that's something to think about as well, for sure.
Really, what it comes down to at the end of the day is, I mean, at least for me personally, and I mean, I know this will never happen, but I really wish people would treat the nomination as the award, as opposed to whoever gets the trophy. Because, I mean, like we've been saying, this has been an exceptionally good year for cinema. Like, not only domestically, but internationally as well. And there's so much good stuff out there. It's like, let's stop focusing on the, oh my God, this got snubbed, or this didn't happen, or why didn't we get to see this or that, or blah, 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 blah. Let's just focus on the amount of good that we actually have. Because, I mean, in reality, this has been one of the better years for film in general in recent memory. The film we're going to talk about now, I mean, in other years, it may have been an Oscar nominee. But now, for most of us and those of us who see everything, it's barely making our top 10, but it's still an exceptional piece of film.
Yeah, for sure. We really got spoiled this year, and that's why we're all complaining. When you get spoiled, the hand feeds you. That's why you start complaining. You're right.
I'm going to say one more complaint. I think we can all agree that after the Barbie snubs, the greatest snub was Jack Black Peaches from the Super Mario Brothers movie. I wanted to see him dressed as Bowser on the Oscar stage very much. The Academy blew it. But my kids would have stayed up to watch the Oscars if that was going to happen. But no, you're both absolutely right. Like Robot Dreams. Robot Dreams is a fantastic animated film. I loved Robot Dreams. This is a weird one to acknowledge in some ways, but I think the two nominations are the first ones ever for a Mission Impossible franchise. That's fantastic. Like that
Yeah,
franchise, how has that franchise not been nominated for best visual effects over the years? I don't know.
because Tom Cruise is the visual effect.
He is
That's
the
why.
visual effect. It may be some post Top Gun hangover that they got nominated, but you know what? Like it's the franchise. The franchise has earned some recognition for what it's done. I think this is. I appreciate what you said there, Dave, because absolutely, the nomination is the award.
Mhm.
Nice to get it up to the top of the mountain, but it certainly with such a great crop of films this year, I think
That's why, I mean, that's why the Globes added that sort of box office award. I mean, and even something else we can even call a snub. It's like there's no John Wick anywhere.
Yeah, but we did get John Williams for the millionth time.
Yes, I'm okay with that. I'm so the
We
guy's
got one
90.
John. Okay, we did
That's
it.
right. Honestly, like I was thrilled for that, and because I'm like the dude's 91. Just he did a great job with that soundtrack and how he layered it and everything. Anyway, but anyway, I agree. I agree. And as we're talking about this, like you're right, there are so many films that could have been nominated that weren't. Um, and let's transition out of this because you know what, and this is one of them. This is absolutely one of them. We're tipping our hat early here, but Iron Claw. Let's talk about Iron Claw. The Iron Claw tells the true story of the inseparable Von Erich brothers, who made history in the intensely competitive world of professional wrestling in the early 1980s. Through tragedy and triumph, under the shadow of their domineering father and coach, the brothers seek larger than life immortality on the biggest stage in sports entertainment. As always, this podcast is rated S for spoilers. Once we step into the ring, the gloves are off, so to speak. But I would love to hear from you both. What did you think of Iron Claw?
Ding, ding, ding. Like this is one of those films that it, like in other movies about quote unquote pro wrestling, I've never felt that it actually gave the sport the reverence that it deserved. And I mean, in seeing the way they shot it and the training that Zach and Harris and all those guys went through, Chavo Guerrero, getting them ready to do matches. And I mean, and even Sean Durkin was saying, it's like he shot them doing matches over and over again. And I mean, they put in the work and they developed an understanding of the beauty, but also the brutality of the sport. Because on one end, I mean, obviously we can all get wrapped up in it and cheer for it and all that, but it is such a physically demanding sport. I mean, especially sort of back in the day with the Von Erichs, it was one of those things where you had to live the gimmick. You had to do it 24/7, 365. And these guys, I mean, to borrow some wrestling parlance, like they basically worked themselves into a shoot. As much as they knew it wasn't real, it was still real to them.
You know, it's interesting you say that too, Dave, because I remember hearing Ted DiBiase say once in the 19 that when he became the $1 million man, all these guys were making peanuts, and Vince McMahon came up to him and said, "You're the $1 million man." He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "But now you're going to be the $1 million man." What do you mean? He goes, "You're going to stay in the best hotels. You're going to dress the best. You will be the envy of the other people because I want you to live the gimmick that you're living." And he did. He did. Everywhere he went, he got treatment above and beyond the other members of the team because they wanted that gimmick to feel real. It's interesting, that you bring that up because he said he did talk about that back in the days.
And I mean, I love how Sean shot sort of the arena, the sportatorium. He made it feel like it was a church. Like these guys were performing basically in their own version of a church. Like this was pro wrestling as religion. And I mean, especially back then in places like Texas and I mean, where they toured and all that, especially some of these small towns that they would hit. This was the equivalent of high school or college football. It was religion. It was gospel. It's just what you did. And these guys all threw themselves into it. And I mean, you know, as we well know, or we will well talk about, it killed many of them. It's killed a lot of people, but I mean, the Von Erichs particularly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and speaking of real, being real and all that, I dubbed the movie as the year's most honest film. Now, not honest in its accuracy of events. I mean,
Yes. Yeah, yeah.
the movie itself. I mean, if we're getting into spoilers, I mean, omits one brother entirely, right? Also denies the existence that the Von Erichs had daughters. Sorry, daughters were in the family before the brothers ever entered the picture, but other than that, no one really goes into a movie for getting a history lesson, for historical accuracy. And Ridley Scott, I believe, will attest to that as well with his Napoleon. But what I mean in terms of honesty is it's the emotions it conjures in you, the emotions it aims for, the arcs that it tries to establish. They all work very well and they're earned. And I think that's the power that it has. And it does some things in the film that any other film would do, would you think would be gimmicky, you would think it would be mawkish, but in here it kind of works. And particularly in a late sequence, kind of an afterlife sequence where the brothers all meet with each other
Yeah.
and they embrace each other after they've entered sort of the afterlife, after the grueling life of and expectations and pressure and familial obligation. They embrace each other in the afterlife, and that any other movie that would be very mawkish, but here it completely works.
That moment almost took me right out of the film. Actually, I remember watching it and going, okay, uh, all right. Yeah, well, I see what we're going. We're going for a bit too much here. It's going to be hokey. And dang it, doesn't he stick it? He sticks the landing. And at the end of that scene, I sat there and I went, I can't believe I actually feel like that was one of the more powerful moments in the film. Was this final moment that could have gone, schmaltzy, if you will, or like too hokey, and it just drives home the point of the film in so many ways. I love that you call it honest because it really feels raw, no pun intended. It just is like this isn't about, okay, so it's not no holds barred, and I don't even know if you two remember this movie, but in the mid, Dave's smiling, in the mid 1980s, you've probably never even heard of this movie, No Holds Barred. Have you heard of this film?
I've not heard of this one. No.
Oh my
Oh, you're
God.
gonna look it up. Oh, you're gonna look it up after this. No Holds Barred was a Hulk Hogan movie, and
Oh, okay.
it was Hulk Hogan versus Zeus, and it was basically Rocky in a wrestling ring. And then the WWE actually did the feud in the ring with the two guys. Like, it was just nonsense. It is bad. Like, it's a bad film. But this is not a film. This is a film that takes place in wrestling, but it's so grounded, and it's so grounded about the people, and it's this tension between real and what's not real, caught between those two things. Like, I love watching that scene where they're trying to do the promo, and he just can't get it right, and they just keep doing it over again.
Yeah.
Like, oh, it's like, for anybody who's watched pro wrestling and is having a bit of a moment again right now, um, like, we just see the end product. We just see that, that I'm gonna come out on Saturday and I'm gonna get you. But this is sort of like, okay, can we do that again? All right, let's go back. All right, you get to. It's they're not characters, they're people, and it's such a beautiful way to film
Yeah.
that.
And the effect of that moment is to show that each brother had their own merit, right? Their own flair that they brought to it, right? Where as David, played by Harris Dickinson, he was the one who had the kind of showmanship quality to him, right? And he's the one who, because of that, in the film, kind of reached a higher status before the other brothers, right? Whereas Kevin, he was the one who was built really well and wrestled really well, but didn't really have that type of showmanship quality to him. He was more of a really at the heart of himself was very a quiet, kind of subdued person. Was very gentle, a gentle person outside, inside, but very masculine and very brawny looking on the outside, right? That's why he didn't have that kind of showmanship quality. And so, what I really like about what Durkin does with the script here is he renders one brother's success, the other's failure. He renders tragedy and triumph really become inextricable, such just as inextricable as the bond if these brothers have. So I think that's really the heart of the film. I think it does really well. It's how it links tragedy and triumph, and also one brother's success meaning the other's failure, and that kind of pressure kind of mounts, comes to a boil, and you see it come, simmer out in really really heartbreaking ways. And I think that's the real heart to the film. And I think I was telling you this when we walked outside the screening as well. I was gushing about it with you, but it's not a wrestling movie. It's not a wrestling movie at all. And Dave is saying it doesn't really give the sport reverence. It's not a wrestling movie at all. I feel it's a drama, a family drama that just happens to have wrestling on the side.
No, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, right. So that's what I think the movie does really well.
It's not a movie for wrestling fans, as it were.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's why it's caught on so much. I don't know if you guys saw this, but I think Adele at a concert was like yelling that Iron Claw was her favorite movie of the year. I think this famous tennis player also said after a match, I gotta see Iron Claw, right? So it's caught on in that way because it's not really about wrestling. Wrestling is just the medium it uses to tell its very relatable, heartbreaking story. That's the power of it, really.
Well, and I mean, it's amazing how we get so caught up and invested in stories of family and in the story of these brothers and how they were intertwined with one another and just seeing their lives unfold. I mean, even with certain sort of the surprises that, like even Steve, you didn't know. Like, I mean, I remember at the end of that screening, you're like, Dave, did you know Carrie didn't have a foot? I'm like, yeah, you didn't,
I had no idea. I used to watch him. I'm pretty sure I've seen him. I saw him live because I used to watch during those days. I didn't know. Well, the other ones didn't make it to WWE, but I remember watching the Texas Tornado, Kerry Von Erich, and I remember thinking that he walked as a child. I remember thinking like he walks kind of strangely, but on his way to the ring, he sort of has a bit of a hop. But sure, whatever. I had no idea he had one foot. I had no clue. Like that's incredible. Honestly, because I had no idea. No idea. He would move. That guy put in the work. He would fly around that ring.
And I mean, it speaks to the dedication of the brothers, not only to each other, but to this world that they felt almost that they owed a debt to, if that's maybe the right way to put it, just based on how their father raised them and sort of built them up to sort of be involved in this business. It was tragic, but it was fascinating to see all at the same time. I mean, the character of Fritz, played by Holt McKinney, he does such a fantastic job of playing this archetypal father figure who you're sympathetic towards, but he's a bastard all at the same time. It's like this movie is working on so many different character levels because there isn't good guys and bad guys. There isn't sort of, somebody to root for or somebody to root against. But you see these multiple levels of humanity coming out through these characters. And it's sad and it's tragic, but it's also gorgeous, and it's really a masterclass. It speaks to what Durkin did with this story, and it's really amazing. And I remember, some of us got to talk to Durkin. I even asked him, it's like, why the brothers? Because there was, even particularly that era of wrestling, there were colorful characters, there was tragedy, there was a lot of bad stuff that went on. But he even said it was the dynamic of the brothers and the dynamic of the family that kind of drew him in. And that's what he's so beautifully portrayed here in this film.
I want to talk a little bit about this for a minute, because about the reality of wrestling, because we're talking this. You're absolutely right. Like, this is a family drama. I was going to say it's a family film, and that might communicate the wrong message.
That's a stretch, but yeah,
it's not Air Bud. It's this is a family drama, but even in these characters, like the idea of pro wrestling for them, you know, like you said, Dave, this is church to them. This they are devoted to it. And even there's that incredible scene with Lily James and um, Zac Efron, who is amazing in this. Zac Efron is incredible. And as they're talking about wrestling, she's like, "What? Isn't it fake?" And he said, "Oh, it's not fake. It is not fake." And I mean, I know that to varying degrees, you've both watched pro wrestling. Some you know maybe more than others, but what is the power of pro wrestling, and is it fake to you?
Are movies fake? Our television fake? Is live theater fake? It's just another form of storytelling that people get invested in and bring themselves into to find entertainment and distraction in, you know, their varying degrees of mundane lives. I mean, it's I almost equate pro wrestling to uh the traveling players in sort of the old Shakespeare days who would be have their wagon and their buggy going from town to town telling different stories and then circling back again. It is it is a very pure form of storytelling at the end of the day. As much as we can mock it and laugh about it, or you know, with various things that have gone on, you know, things we even talked about before we went on recording, that you know we would remember from back in the day. When it all comes down to it, it's about character and it's about getting invested in those characters. And I mean, I think that's really what the draw of it is at the end of the day. And I mean, why it's having such a boom now is, I mean, at least from my perspective, is especially in this day and age of reality TV and TikTok and this, that, and everything, like we're still craving stories and we're still craving character. And this is one of those forms of entertainment that every week there's going to be something new. 52 weeks a year, 365 days a year. There's never going to be a rerun. There's never going to be a repeat. Something's always going to evolve. You can walk away from it. You can pick it up again later on, but it's never something that's going to stay stagnant.
Mhm.
And I think that is one of the big things that is drawing people in. It is a form of entertainment that is constantly in motion.
And I mean, I think I'm an interesting case with this movie. I'm not as well versed, I think, as you two in the world of wrestling. I'm not really caught up in it at all. You
We're
know,
bringing you
I'm not
back.
as big as a fan, but I think it goes back to your question that you're saying, whether or not to it goes back to I think the statement I made earlier. It's the year's most honest film. It is. There's honesty in what it's portraying,
Yeah.
right? It doesn't matter the medium that it uses, the emotion that it has. It's honest, and whether you're the most avid wrestling watcher or not, what really gets you is yes the character that it brings you with the kind of humanity in which you see yourself within these characters, right? And just want to touch on I think the ensemble does a really good job in capturing that type of that humanity, right? And I really want to I think don't think we touched on Efron enough. I think Efron really I think shines in this film. I think it's his best performance ever. I think that he's ever brought to the film. I'm sorry, High School Musical. I'm sorry, but it right. It's the Iron Claw, right? And I think really what's great about his performance is he kind of really taps into the kind of psyche of a man who's forced to not see, who's consistently forced to be outshined by his brothers, but the greater indignity is watching them helplessly destroy themselves. It's not that they get higher than him. It's watching them helplessly, ruin themselves in the process. And he kind of imbues that kind of tragedy with really a type of nuance that his career really isn't known for at all. I mean, his performances really rely on one aspect, one type of gimmick. Where here, I mean, it's he really ladles it with subtext and texture, and you really see a multifaceted person, and Efron really brings him to life. But if it's for my money, I really think it's Dickinson who really brings forward my favorite performance. The type of inner turmoil he has in his eyes, where he's forced to just really experience everything by himself, the highs, the lows, and he gets to a point where he just has to shelter the worst of it on himself without telling anybody what he's really going like inside. And I really, really enjoy that. And kudos also goes to, I'm gonna kick myself for forgetting the actor's name, but who played the youngest brother. I'm not sure if you guys remember the actor's name who played the youngest brother.
I'm looking it up.
Trying to just see here.
Mike?
Stanley Simons.
Yeah,
Stanley
Mike.
Simons.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Stanley
Yeah,
Simons.
Stanley
Yeah.
Simons, who plays Mike. I think he also really brings in a great performance as well. And I also have to shout out Lily James. I mean, she really could have been trapped in kind of being that supportive wife trope, especially as her character has those sweet, caring sensibilities added onto her. But she kind of fosters a character that holds her spouse accountable at each turn. She doesn't make it easy for Efron's Kevin at all, and blames him, really holds him accountable for putting the distance between them when he tries to focus more on the wrestling side of his family side, and kind of embraces the Von Erich curse, right? So I think the ensemble goes a long way, and then like you were saying, just the cinematography, the real filmmaking of it, Dave, that Durkin and company really bring to it. The slow cascading camera work that kind of slowly brings you into the squared circle, and really lets you feel every punch, every wallop, right? And based on the tone that the film really has, every punch that you feel doesn't ring with kind of spectacle, and it's there, but really rings with kind of this pathos, this really deep-seated pathos every punch that hits. So yeah, it's really really well done. It's a technical feast, really, and yeah, it's from the visuals to the performances, really is locked in on kind of the story it wants to tell. So I think really succeeds on really every front.
And just to dovetail back on your point about Zach, it's amazing to me in watching him do this performance, and in many ways, and bear with me on the point I'm about to make, I almost compare him in a certain way to somebody like Tom Cruise. Is he the best actor in the world? No. I mean, when we see a Benedict Cumberbatch or even somebody in this film like a Erich Dickinson on screen, the work they put in is effortless. But Zach, you can see the work that he's putting in. You can see him getting better. And I mean, I think that's another aspect of this film that has really drawn people in, that you can see Zach working his ass off. And I mean, there is an appreciation for that as well. I mean, especially with people like us who have, see far too many movies. Like, we know he's putting in the work.
I think you're both absolutely right. I want to merge your two answers together, because I think that both things, both of your comments here tap into the joy of this film and pro wrestling at the same time. I'm going to go back to pro wrestling because obviously I'm a fan. I was excited about this film, but I was excited about this film. I was not prepared for what I was going to get. But here, I want to circle back to what you said, Dave. Seth Rollins, who's in WWE, recently compared what they do to a traveling circus, and he was okay with it. He said, "We roll into a town, we do our shtick, and we move on out, and that's what we do." They're creating 8 hours of live television every single week, or 7 hours of live television every single week. Right?
And I mean, that's not even including sort of the behind the scenes stuff and then the PLEs and all that other stuff. Yeah,
absolutely.
I mean, that's why the Netflix deal went down, just because it's turnkey content.
Yeah,
and it's always fresh.
Absolutely. But part of the power, I think, of pro wrestling, even though it is scripted, is when you feel like they are being real.
Yes.
So what you were saying, Prob, about the family drama, people know it's a show. People know it's a show, but there are things that they'll drop in, and there's emotion in their performances uh, that actually blur the lines sometimes. For wrestling fans out there, I'm gonna get a little wrestling-y here for a second. The return of CM Punk to the WWE was a big deal, and for days after this came out, people were analyzing the reactions of the wrestlers in the ring because there was such controversy after he left. There were real problems backstage, like between the human people, and everybody knew it. So we live in an age where we are looking for stories all the time. Like you said, TikTok is stories. TikTok stories. They're shorter. YouTube is stories. Like and smash that subscribe button uh, for more stories. No, but we're always looking for stories, absolutely. And when those lines are blurred, they're between story and reality. I think it makes it more powerful because we know they're real people. We know they're real people. This story isn't about wrestling because it's about four brothers, but these four brothers, their job is wrestling. So when the dad talks about Carrie's my favorite, then Kev, then David, then Mike, but the rankings can always change. You laugh, but you also go, wait a second. When they're in the ring and the dad grabs the mic and says that, he says, I think it's David is going to be the next champion. The reason it lands is because Kevin has gone through all this stuff saying that it's like a job promotion. When you're good at your job, then people honor that, and that's why they give you belts and stuff like this. It's not about it's there's a reality that's playing out in that moment. It's not about the belt. The boys are shocked
Yeah.
because it's upsetting to the family dynamic. And that is so much more interesting than people pretending to be any character. And I don't mean that just for wrestling. I mean for anything. When you know that it means something to those people, you can tell the difference. I think you're absolutely right. The performances in this are incredible, just across the board incredible. Is it Harris Dickinson? Am I right, or is it Harry
Yeah,
Dickinson?
Harris. Yeah.
Harris Dickinson. It's just unbelievable, just incredible. They're all great, and yes, Zac Efron. This might be better than his performance in 17 again. No, this is absolutely incredible work. I
Wait.
uh,
Yeah, I would just say the only thing that the performances I thought they're all great, but I just feel for Jeremy Allen White. I mean, can he get a stable family ever in any of the films he works in, the roles he does? I mean, yeah, like he continues his the work he started in The Bear. Epitomizing someone who's deeply conflicted. And with that weathered visage, that iconic weathered visage that he arms himself with his performances. It's really captivating. And I mean, you could say he's being typecast with only two works, right? So, but he does it really well. Yeah. But yeah, hopefully Jeremy Allen White, please get a stable family next time, please.
you know what's going to happen. He's going to be cast as like Doctor Doom or something like that. Now it's like the Marvel jump is almost there. Or the Thing. He'll be the Thing and covered with prosthetics. Let's go into the family drama for a minute here. I would love to hear from you both about one of the things that's stated. They talk about how I want to make sure I get this quote right. Hold on here. I have it here. Dad tried to protect us with wrestling. He said if we were the toughest, the strongest, nothing could ever hurt us. I believed him. We all did. The film opens with this line. What are your thoughts on that in relation to these characters in this film? Like, what do you think that's true? In general, do you think it worked for them? What do you think?
Yes and no, because this was a line from someone who was ultimately a failure, not a failure, but did not achieve the success that he wished to in a business that he wanted to. And ultimately, he put his own failings and projected them onto his kids, and then had that all play out as one would succeed and one wouldn't. This was such a fascinating portrait of flawed parenting in many ways. I mean, even sort of when we're establishing everything with the boys and early on, it's like, oh, mom, can you go talk to so and so? It's like, oh, no, no, it's between you brothers. There was something in the dynamic of that family where the boys were on their own versus the father. They all loved each other, but it wasn't sort of the atypical healthy relationship that it probably should have been. This was a situation where the father was projecting his own perceived failures onto his kids. You know, the business didn't let me be NWA champion, but you're going to be NWA champion. You're going to show them that we're the Von Erichs, damn it, and blah blah blah. It was all about Fritz projecting his insecurities onto the boys, and the only one it didn't kill was obviously Zach. You know, as I don't know, Kevin. You know, because again, it was one of those things where, as good as Kevin Von Erich was, again, I mean, that's like you said, Prab. He was not the flashy brother. He was not the most talented or the most outgoing or the this or that. He was not the one who was the best designed to succeed in professional wrestling. And that's probably ultimately what saved his life.
Yeah, and like that quote, going along the lines of what you said as well, and that quote, right? The biggest, the strongest, the best, right? Yeah, in body, but their father didn't prepare them for the mind. That's the part that failed them. Not having that support, you know, you can be the strongest person ever. You know, the bridge can be made of the strongest material ever, but if the thing supporting it isn't strong enough, it's going to crumble. And I think that's what you see systematically throughout the film. And I think that's what Durkin is more interested in, right? He's more interested in the toxic patterns of familiar trauma, how they batter a person into a shell of themselves, rather than
And the
really.
failures of toxic masculinity.
Mhm.
I mean,
Exactly. Yeah.
this is the prototypical example of why toxic masculinity destroys.
Yeah, and like I was saying, like, yeah, he's not interested in the high flying exploits of these daredevil brawlers, right? He's interested in the toxic patterns of familiar trauma that can break people who entertain us, who practically do the impossible, like you said, 52 weeks a year. How it's not the broken bones that batter them, but the lack of support, the emotions that really destroy them.
And the brothers who were still united in the face of all that as well. The brothers who would support themselves in the face of their father, who they could never match or live up to the expectations that were put on them.
Mm.
It's a family story. It's a story of brothers. It's it's a tragic and sad, but it's so gorgeously executed that I mean, I honestly can't wait to see it again.
Yeah, and really, it's emblematic. You know, when one part of the vine begins to rot, it spreads to everyone. Right?
Yeah,
And even
yeah.
though, and you know, we said we're going to do spoilers, and I think it all culminates really from one brother going to the other brother, and when we're left with Zach, that final line he says, "I used to be a brother." That's why it hits with such profundity at the end, and it makes you really look at yourself, the relationships you have with your siblings. I mean, at that moment, I just thought about, like, I couldn't imagine, you know, being without my sisters, and you know, the support that we give each other. It's you know, his brothers and the memory of them will live on, but you know, he's gonna lack that type of support in his life, because of the toxic, the unreachable goals their father set on them. Yeah, and it's really portrayed in really a subtle, earned way, and I think that's why I keep going back to that name. It's the year's most honest film in emotion and theme.
he wanted to be the best brother he could be, not necessarily the best wrestler he could be. Whereas
Hmm.
the brothers were more rolled into the hype of the system than Kevin was. And it's such a sad story. And I mean, like we've said before, the historical accuracy of things that happen in this movie is not 100%, but the spirit and sort of the tragedy of it all is 110%. It's so bang on in just sort of the tragic emotional failure of familial support, and how, as much as the brothers tried to lift each other up, they were not in a situation where they were going to succeed.
Yeah, and yeah, and just to touch on that note, that the whole tragedy, I view this movie really, if people, I really hope when people talk about this movie, it's not in through the lens of a wrestling movie, but hey, what's a great American tragedy? And you think
Yeah,
of, yeah, right, and you want to think of the
100%.
Iron
Yeah.
Claw, right? And that's what I hope it goes down as, and I really believe it's, as time will pass, it's going to be seen as really necessary, essential work in like the canon of American tragedies, right? It's a testament to a film that, in its utter heartbreak and its calamity that it shows, reminds us to cherish the bonds that really matter. And I think that's the real power of the film, and real key to its staying power for sure. And that's why it's resonated with everyone. I mean, who would have thought, like I said, Adele would champion this movie? So,
And I mean, I love that you brought it, just defining it as an American tragedy. And I mean,
mhm.
it just even going back to what we were referencing before of, the circus coming to town and the traveling players going in and out. Like, that's the definition of America in many ways. Like, when we think of tragedies in other forms of storytelling and entertainment, we think of it along more of the Shakespearean kind of variety of, royalty and kings and queens and that kind of thing. But when it comes down to the American experience, these were the kings and queens. And there is such a unique parallel there as well, just to see how these people on top can be so alone and fall in the ways that they do. And I mean, this again, like, I mean, we're repeating ourselves, but this is such a gorgeous but accurate depiction of tragedy and just letting the people down around you that you shouldn't be.
So, yeah. So it's confirmed we have Death of a Salesman, and then now we have Iron Claw.
Yeah, yeah. No,
You
I
know what?
mean,
That's a great comparison. I would not have made it, but it's a great one.
that's not hyperbole. I mean, that's fairly accurate.
When you hit
Grapes of
low and
Wrath,
hit
Death of a
hard.
Salesman, Iron Claw,
It really, and then yeah, you put Killers of the Flower Moon in there, you get a great three-piece right there.
Oh man. So it's also a very depressing three-piece right there. But no, yeah. I mean, I mean, I can't even say it any better myself. Like, this is incredible. Like, they drink the Kool-Aid because their dad tells them this is the way the world works. And life does not work that way. You can't, like, they're trying, he's telling them, if you just tough it out, right? Like, this is toxicity at its most basic. Tough out everything.
Steve, acknowledge me. Acknowledge me, Steve. You know?
Again, you make me do that every time we're on this thing. I mean, every
No,
time.
but you know what but you see what I'm saying though. It's like
Oh, it's right.
there are so many parallels.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, this is a father who's telling his kids, the way to survive is just by fighting through it. But Prob, I love what you said about the bridge. Like, that's incredible. If the supports underneath it are not strong, then it's not going to survive. It doesn't matter how hard it is on the outside. And this is what we see. This is the fall of in many ways, there's the fall of the American dream here. No pun intended on that one. But you have them being told that they need to succeed, but all they want to do is be together. And that to them is success, but they're being fed this thing saying, no, that's not enough. You need to be the champ. I don't know, like Dave, I think it was you that said the others are more into the system. I'm not sure any of them are into the system other than Kevin. I think they're all into it because their dad tells them they should be. Like it seems
But
like
no, that's
everyone
just
he's
it.
just
Yeah.
recruiting. Yeah,
But I
like
mean, the system being their dad, not necessarily the system of
okay.
professional wrestling.
Yeah, because like Carrie's, after Carrie's doesn't work out, Carrie doesn't work out in football. I think he's trying for football. His dad
No,
comes
I
in
think
and
it
goes,
was
"It's
That was
time."
the Olympics. It was the
Oh, the
Olympics.
the
Olympics, the
Olympics.
Olympics, and his dad goes, "It's time now. You will join us." And he's like, "Okay."
Yeah.
It's
And
like that.
that's yeah, and it's also upsetting that the boycott happened, right? The 1980
Oh yeah,
Olympics, and then that's the dominoes keep falling, right? I mean, if the dominoes didn't fall the way they did, maybe he would have never been in that position. But who would have thought going back to your family would lead to your demise? When it's supposed to be a place of comfort and security, it led to his demise, slowly but surely.
but yeah, this is the heartbreaking thing to me about this film is that if going back to your family is what leads to your demise,
Mhm.
it's really coming from one corner of the family. Like the brothers are trying to elevate one another, and this is the toxicity embedded within Fritz's character, which is just eating away at the roots of everybody else. Just it's so hard to watch in moments. Those are actually some of the harder moments to watch than their personal tragedies because you can see where it's rooted. Um,
And I mean, it also speaks to how Carrie ultimately killed himself.
mm,
Because I mean, if you're angry or you're this or you're that, like he killed himself, but he couldn't bring himself to sort of bring the violence of that onto his family. Like he didn't shoot himself in the head. It's very uncharacteristic for a man to shoot himself in the chest, and that's what Carrie did because it was one of those things where, as much as he needed to be done with it and like be free of it, he still could not bring himself to. He had to do it in the quietest way possible
mm.
to still respect his family. I mean, and I think that's what was the saddest thing of all. He was so broken that he just had to be done with it. He wasn't angry at anybody. He just it had to be over.
Mm.
Like it really is a portrait of, and I mean Jeremy Allen White does it so well, but just seeing somebody who's given up on everything.
And really, it's typically in a familiar story, it would the constant battling and bruising of the sport that would kind of bring someone into that position, but it's not. It's the emotional batterment. It's the constant unapproval that you get from someone that you basically die trying to live up to, and that's what seals the coffin for you, right? And that's the heartbreaking aspect of it. Men who like in every way lived up to the image, sculpted like basically like people out of gods out of the Greek pantheon, but it's the inside that really led to their demise. And like again, I can't say enough. Durkin does an impeccable job in kind of reiterating that and showing that through his cinematography and filmmaking that really renders it palpable.
I
Absolutely.
mean, even when you look at the way the other brothers died, like all of these brothers died in one different way or another by essentially sucking it up. There wasn't a dealing with it. They sucked it up and it killed them.
Yeah.
Either via drugs or via just the abuse of the industry or just, quietly, fading away like Gary did. And I mean, it very much is a family curse, but I mean, I'm so glad they told this story, but at the same time, it's one of those things that especially I think in this world of professional wrestling, it's gonna be hard for that kind of thing to happen again. But at the same time, we still see a lot of these stories in professional football, in professional sports. I mean, with especially sort of in the early 2000s, when people didn't understand CTE and the issues around the concussions and what it can do to these athletes psychologically.
Mhm. Yeah, and since we're Canadian, it reminds me of Wayne Gretzky. I think he was when he was dealing with that stuff in the '80s. I mean, you would have trainers and family members saying, "Oh, just sweat it off. Go to a sauna and just sweat it off, and it'll wear off." And that's essentially what their father is doing is just sweat it off, weather it, and then until they reach a breaking point. And that breaking point again is not physical, but it's one that's mental. And they like I said, they crack. The foundation is never sturdy enough to hold kind of the image that they hold of themselves and of their father. It's just again really really powerfully made film that um, you know across its runtime has a really tangible undercurrent of sadness that at every turn is earned. It's never sad. It's never pries on our emotions. It never manipulates us. It takes us really in a subdued approach, showing us how that sadness really kind of permeates these characters and becomes their undoing.
And I mean, and that's why it gets summed up so tragically in Carrie, because I mean, yeah, the youngest son died electrocuting himself. David was apparently a drug overdose. The younger one, Mike, uh, it was the business that killed him, just toxic shock and just not being able to physically go through the abuse of the industry. And it culminated in Carrie, who just never, he just couldn't deal with it.
Yeah. And I mean, we've seen this play out in, like you said, in so many different ways, pro sports or what have you. Even down to things like I know it's a different scenario, but something like happens with Owen Hart when Owen Hart died with in WWE, and what a tragedy that was. But the family aspect as well, how it ripped them apart in so many ways. Now, again, that was again different. It wasn't by choice, but these are real people suffering very real mental illnesses, very real struggles, very real physical effects, day by day, because they're putting themselves on the line and bringing their family drama with them to work, as we do. But I think we
Even
lose
in
sight
even
of
in
it.
popular entertainment like film and
Yeah.
television, I mean, how many stories have we heard of, so and so actor who had big hit show back in the day, ultimately kills himself because, nothing was going on. I mean,
Robin
uh,
Williams.
Ellen's DJ, Twitch,
Yeah.
the show ends, he's just doing other stuff, and he was dealing with mental illness and he killed himself.
Yeah. And that's the interesting thing about celebrity on any level is we can lose the humanity
Yeah.
because we feel like we own their picture. We know who they are, but we don't. We don't. We lose their humanity for the sight of their character. And it's, I mean, it's a fascinating and terrifying thing to hear these stories of people who are losing themselves when the camera's not on.
And again, I think it goes back to what we touched on. It's that's why I think it lends itself more to the canon of American tragedies
Mm.
rather than a wrestling movie because
No, totally, 100%. Yeah.
it's a story that manifests in countless families across the world and even in North America, countless families from generation to generation. And again, maybe that's what is the Von Erich curse. It's that inability, uh, to understand how you're damaging, how you're eating a family from the inside out, and how it goes on from generation to generation to generation. And so I think that's again what really is key to the film's staying power, and what makes it resonate with audiences versed in wrestling or not versed in it.
And I mean, even to spin it back to the Oscars about like how we were talking before of, this person got snubbed and this person got snubbed, and sort of the vitriol and how people get worked up over it on online on whatever social media platform you're using. I refuse to call Twitter X. I'm calling it Twix from now on. It's just I want to keep that trending, but
Yeah.
it's one of those things where it's like if we're dealing with people who are well adjusted enough, the work, everyone wants to be recognized. Everyone wants to be appreciated for what they do. And I mean, sometimes you just put your foot down and stand up for yourself and do those sort of things. But at the end of the day, the well-adjusted people are fine enough when the lights go off, when the celebrity is not there. I mean, I'm sure William Dafoe would have loved to have been nominated for an Oscar for Poor Things, but I'm sure he's also happy to be able to just go straight to the party and not have to sit through the ceremony if he doesn't want to. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's
but
thing.
now I'm still gonna be mad that Iron Claw didn't get nominated. It got snubbed completely. That's why I'm still gonna be mad about that now.
And Zac Efron gets to go straight to the Vanity Fair party. He doesn't have to sit through the awards.
Yeah, and I think part of the reason why this film, even though we're gushing about it and the whole world's gushing about it, I think part of the reason why it didn't get nominated is again, the Academy is not a full meritocracy. It's about campaigning, and even if you look at A24's slot of films, I mean, they even struggle to get past Live for the recognition. If you look at Past Lives, only 2 nominations. The only big movie that they got was Zone of Interest, and that's really is because a lot of critics groups are championing it, right? And I guess the release date of Iron Claw and then just where it fell into the awards kind of madness really just allowed it to get overshadowed.
But you also have to look at just sort of the realities of the micro studio versus like of an A24 versus the Netflixes or the Warner Brothers or the Paramounts or the it's a different beast, and it's just not the same kind of game. And I mean, as much as I love something like A Past Lives and would have wanted her to be nominated, then get acting and directing nominations, sort of the screenplay slot for a movie like that is what you expect. And I mean, that's the award in and of itself. And maybe she wins, maybe she doesn't. But it's, again, I mean, it even goes back to sort of what I said at the top of just let's stop focusing on the snub. Let's stop focusing on what should have been or what we should have perceived should have been. Let's appreciate the great that we're having in a film like Iron Claw, and even with the Von Erich family themselves. It's like, let's not focus on the sad way Kerry Von Erich killed himself, but let's focus on how awesome the Texas tornado was.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a great point. Gentlemen, we got to wrap this up. Unless if there's something else, I want to keep going. But we've hit our time. If there's something you want to talk about,
it's your show. I mean,
I know it's my show.
Run as long as you want.
I guess that's true. All right, sit back, everybody.
As we get ready for hour 2.
That's right. Iron Claw 2, the Ironer Claw.
The Bronze Claw.
The Bronze Claw. We're moving up.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, I mean, Iron Claw, again, I'll reiterate again, it's most honest film, not in terms of its historical accuracy, but in the emotions it conjures in its audience. And I think, despite it being overshadowed and we can be mad about it, it's one that's going to stay with us for a while. And again, it's the reason why these actors are going to have a big role in years to come and kind of stay in the zeitgeist. It's, I think, a big reason why Jeremy Allen White's in our Calvin Klein underwear ads, and we're gonna keep thinking about it for years and years for sure.
And also, this isn't the movie that people are gonna forget. This is gonna be one of those movies where people are gonna talk to each other. It's like, hey, did you see the Iron Claw? No, what's the Iron Claw? Oh, you should really see the Iron Claw. I mean, it's gonna be one of those movies where the lore and the audience and the appreciation of it will only grow over time.
Yeah. Yeah. Can't wait to show my parents this and see them cry. Can't wait.
Well, I mean that already we anybody who would ask, we already know we've tipped our hand, but I mean,
Skip it. It's crap. No, it's
screen it, yeah, Iron Claw, screen it or skip it. A duh.
Screen, yeah.
it's an unequivocal screen it.
Yeah.
It
And
really
screen it
is.
on the big screen because I mean you need to see those like you said, those shots of the squared circle and how it just kind of gets you in that mindset. It's really a film that, typically you would think you could watch it at home, but I think the big screen really does a service to it.
And kids screen everything on the big screen, really. I mean, as much as there are movies that will play on the small screen and whatnot, there is nothing like the shared experience of being in a darkened movie house and being told a story. So please, no matter what you're watching this weekend or wherever you are, screen it on the big screen. Go to the cinema, do it properly.
Cry together, for sure.
Iron Claw, cry together. That should just be
Yeah.
the tagline of the film. I mean, absolutely, it's unequivocal. Screen it. I mean, we've been gushing about this since we started, rightfully so. It's an incredible film. Um, Gentlemen, I have loved this conversation. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate your time. Let's, sell your wares. How can people follow you? Find your stuff.
Ab.
Yeah, I write for a bunch of publications, including Exclaim, But Why Though, Our Culture Magazine, Hollywood Handle, and yeah, you can find me at my name, Prabhjot Bains 96 on Twitter, Instagram, wherever your social media, and I'll be posting my movie takes and reviews, and you can disagree with me all you want, and I don't care.
Fantastic. Fantastic. David?
Well, as always, my name is Dave Voigt, and I'm the editor and publisher over at InTheSeats.ca for all the latest and greatest from the world of film, television, basically the moving image at large. But also, I am the host and producer with my dulcet tones of In the Seats With, where I sit down with a wide-ranging variety of entertainment industry professionals, and I pick their brain about current projects, state of the industry, how they got started, and so very much more in a light and in a conversational fashion, which is available on podcast services everywhere as well as YouTube. So as we were saying before, hit that like, hit that subscribe, ding that bell, do everything you got to do. This week we've been talking to a lot of the cast of Special Ops Lioness, which is out on Blu-ray now, and that was a lot of fun. And there's more and more stuff to come because we're all a little sick in the head in this business, but we love it so. So please support us as best you can.
That should be our tagline. The film critic business. We're sick in the head. It works. It's tight. Appreciate you both so much. This has been so much fun. And as always, a reminder, you can find us wherever podcasts are available. And of course, you can like and subscribe to us on YouTube as well, where we also have great interviews with industry professionals, plus Screenfish Radio, which are awesome conversations just like these. If you go to the podcast page on screenfish.net, you can download Fishing for More, which are some small group questions, help you get the conversation started where you are. And I so grateful for you both. Thank you so much, guys, for being on. And for you at home, we started the conversation. This was Screenfish.